Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley here with Louie Vaccher. You can find him at On3. He does the Northwestern site, and he has been a guest before, folks. And really, Louie and I were talking before the cameras started rolling that we've had a better beat on what was supposed to happen in this game until last Saturday when all of a sudden Northwestern turned into an offensive juggernaut and the Illini were filleted by the offensive juggernaut that is Wisconsin, which totally threw apart where our discussion was probably going to go. It is no longer going. There you have it. But Louie, thanks for coming on. As we
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
Hey, no problem. As we look at this, thank goodness Northwestern doesn't have to have their back against the wall to get to a bowl. That's the only thing I think the Illini have going for them after a really shaky outing up in Madison. When this offense comes down, and of course, the Illini fans probably haven't paid much attention to Northwestern's offense, and then you see the game they played against Minnesota, who usually has a solid defense. And what the heck happened to Northwestern's offense last Saturday that turned them into a bunch of paid assassins out there? Because they looked different than they've looked all year.
Yeah, I asked David Braun that same question after the game. He didn't really have an answer, to tell you the truth, but it was astounding. Preston Stone, first of all, had his by far best game as a Wildcat. He's had a real up and down year. I'd say overall he's been a disappointment compared to the expectations people had coming in. And he had never thrown for 200 yards against a Big Ten opponent. He went for over 300 on Saturday. He was 15 of 15 in the second half. The guy was unbelievable. Just had an unbelievable game. Then they had Caleb Komalafe went over 100 yards rushing, and they had two receivers go over 100 yards. It was an explosion. They had over 500 yards offense, put up 38 points when the most that they scored against the Big Ten team was 22 going into that game. So it was something I don't think anybody saw coming. And it really, like you said, changed the outlook between that game and then what happened in Madison. I'm not sure anymore. I thought I had a beat on the game, but now we'll see.
Yeah, it's how I feel exactly the same way. Maybe he was just looking to get his name in the Heisman Trophy. Excuse me. Yeah, that was because it certainly that was one of those unbelievable performances. And you just don't hear of guys going 15 for 15 and a half. That is just astounding. And I was trying to do other things, and I had the game on and literally turned it off and then back on again. And I'm like, wow, it looks like Northwestern's not got a shot here. And then got involved in other things, and then boom, tie game. And I'm like, holy cow, how did this happen? And
Yeah.
as you looked at it, just there was plenty of opportunities for Northwestern to give up in that game.
Oh, no question. I think that's a hallmark of a David Braun team, though. They will keep fighting because I tell you, they came out, took a 10-0 lead, and they were in control. Minnesota hit them for a kick return, and things changed. And Northwestern eventually they were down 28-13 in the second half. It all looked lost. And then they just caught fire. They had some bad special teams miscues, made plenty of mistakes. They had 8 penalties. They made a lot of mistakes, but they just kept coming. They overcame them. And I thought that's what makes it to me more impressive is they went through that adversity and they punched their way out of it and eventually got the win. And even, they took the lead and then Minnesota came back and scored and Northwestern had to go down the field again and they did it and got the field goal. And it still wasn't secure till Minnesota missed the field goal on the last play of the game. So it was a wild roller coaster of a game. But for a Northwestern team that they had lost 3 in a row, they were desperate to get that 6th win. And they certainly wanted to get the Wrigley Field monkey off their back, right? They hadn't won theirs in 6 tries since 2010. So it was a very kind of cathartic win for Northwestern. I think a lot of the pressure's off coming into Saturday's game, I think, now that they got that 6th win. And maybe they have a little confidence or a little more confidence as well.
So I'm going to ask you the $10,000 question. Probably Brett Bielema wants to hear the answer. Tell us a little bit about what to expect out of this Northwestern offense.
Yeah, again, I thought I knew this offense, and they were very limited most of the season. They really rely on the ground game. So that's what's going to happen. When I asked David Braun, he said it started with the ground game, and they get Caleb Komalapes going. He's been a big revelation this year. He's really carried that offense. He's the engine. He's a power runner, a one-cut guy. He's perfect for that zone scheme. And if a hole's not there, he'll push the pile or make one himself. He's a tough customer. So he's really emerged as their threat. They've got one wide receiver, Griffin Wilde, who's a transfer from South Dakota State. He's in the top 10 in the Big Ten and catches and yards. And he's been their go-to guy all year. And then last week, really for the first time, they had a number 2. Hayden Elligan had a tremendous game, and he went over 100 yards as well. So those are the guys to keep a watch on. They also like to use the tight ends, especially Hunter Welsing. He had a couple big catches, and he's the last couple of weeks emerged. Their offensive line is a good run blocking offensive line. They're not great in pass protection, but they've been pretty steady all year, and I think they've been much improved over the last couple of years anyway. So they like I said, most of you, they hadn't scored more than 22 points, and if you got a couple score lead on them, you felt the game's over, and they can only run. The passing game was sketchy. Stone he's got 9 interceptions on the year, which is the most. No one's got more than that in the Big Ten anyway. And so they had an up and down kind of season, and last week really came out of nowhere, and it was great to see. It was good to see Preston Stone he's had a tough season in many ways, and so it was good to see him have that kind of a performance on the big stage in the Big Ten, and showed what I think Northwestern fans hoped he would be this year, that it was in there.
Yeah, and what kind of line do they have that was definitely seemed to have a good game on Saturday? What can Illini fans expect from that offensive line, and how good are they?
Yeah, they've got NFL left tackle and Caleb Tiernan. That guy he's been solid his whole career, and he's a guy that's going to play on Sundays. He's got really good feet. So he's the star of the line, if you will. But they've really got some grinders up there. They picked Jackson Carcello as a 5th-year senior at center who up and down career. He never really emerged. And last year he struggled as a starter. And this year he's been great. He's up for the Remington Award. And Evan Berenson is a transfer they picked up from South Dakota State, and Martez Lewis from Minnesota. So they've got some bits and pieces that they work in, and they've been very good in the ground game. I think they're very physical, which you don't often say about a Northwestern offensive line, but they've been able to establish control of the line of scrimmage and get the running game going. They like that, the zone. They have the inside zone, outside zone. They run a little counter, and they've been pretty effective, even against the better defenses like Oregon and Penn State and Nebraska, even USC. They were able to move the ball on the ground a little bit. So that's really the strength of this offense, and they do things off of that, and that's where they'll get in the play action game and get Stone involved. But that's really their bread and butter is the running game.
Yeah, I think it's the Illinois' defense has been problematic at best during the season. I had a few game respite, although I'm not certain if that was more indication of Rutgers and Maryland's weaknesses as opposed to Illinois' strength. But it certainly has been one of those things where Illini fans come into this game not particularly confident in where things will be from that standpoint. How does the defense of Northwestern look? What can the Illini fans expect from them?
Yeah, so the defense, that's really what they hang their hat on, has been their rock all year is the defense. And they've been in the top 20 in scoring. And for as little as the offense provided for most of the season, they've been pretty darn good. The last couple weeks, though, I will say that last few weeks, really, they've given up some yards that I thought against Minnesota, they were much better, but against USC, which has an outstanding offense, and Michigan, they gave up close to 500 yards, but they came up with 5 turnovers too.
Yeah.
They haven't been, I think they've dropped a little bit down the stretch here, and they've been banged up. They've got some injuries in the secondary, but they've been, what they do, it's the same MO they've had for a long time. Northwestern defense. They play a lot of cover 4 on the back end, keep everything in front of them. They tackle, and they're bend but don't break. They'll give you yards between the 20s, but they want you to, if you're going to score on them, they want you to go 10, 12, 15 plays. And they think you're going to make a mistake, get behind the sticks, have a negative play, a sack, penalty, whatever it is. And that's what they do. And they're very good. They're a very sound, disciplined unit. They're in their gaps where they're supposed to be, and they make tackles. And that's what they do. They've been able to come up with some turnovers as well the last couple of weeks, but they're a solid, hard-nosed defense. They play sound, fundamental football.
Who are the outstanding players that Illini fans should be looking for and paying attention to?
Yeah, so Mac Uline, their middle linebacker, is a guy. He's a senior. He's kind of like an old school guy. Really tough player, physical, likes to play between the tackles, makes a ton of tackles, and he's also come up with a few interceptions this year. He's got like 4 of them. He leads the team. So that's been a bit of a surprise, but he's the heart and soul of that defense. On the back end, another guy, number 6, Robert Fitzgerald, is a hitter. He actually leads the team in tackles, and he's one of those guys, I tell you, it's amazing. He plays, like, you see him make plays sideline to sideline. You see him make plays in the backfield and in the deep middle. The guy seems to be everywhere. And he's a tough, old school kind of player to come up and hit people. He really brings the lumber, and he's their leading tackler. And he's a guy you'll see a lot of on Saturday.
Yeah, so they've got a good defense, and obviously Illinois' offense really has been a strong offense, with
Mhm.
the exception of the Indiana game. And then even in the loss to Ohio State, they had some turnovers as opposed to being unable to move the ball. And then Washington just overwhelmed Illini's defense, and Wisconsin was a major issue all over the place all the time. So it was
Yeah.
quite the horrifying train wreck to watch on TV for Illini fans.
It surprised me. I'll tell you that. I did not see that one coming. That
Yeah.
was a surprise.
The funny thing is Northwestern it's been incredible. They lost a game where they had 5 turnovers,
Yeah.
which I would love to see, somebody go through one of the AI systems, go through and try to figure out how many times a team has lost when they had 5 took away the ball 5 times, because
Yeah,
that's
5-0 too.
yeah.
They didn't.
Oh,
Northwestern didn't turn it over, so they were +5 in turnovers. And at the end of the game, they had 2 possessions. All they had to do was get a first down. I think 2 first downs. They could have kneeled it out and won the game, and they just couldn't do it. And that's what Northwestern's offense has been. They really struggled for most year
Minnesota.
until last week. Yeah, until
Okay.
Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah, lucky Illinois. You play Wisconsin and Northwestern, you get them 5 games earlier and they're easy wins. Instead, you wait till they wake up, and then now you got to go play them.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen again, Mike. Who knows? They might have
Yeah.
just caught lightning in a bottle. For one day, they were magnificent, and we may never see that again. I don't know.
Yeah, Illinois' defense has just been a challenge all year long. It's been unexpected. I guess we thought there could be some issues, but didn't think that it would be this glaring. And of course, there were a lot of injuries in the defensive backfield, and young guys have had to play who are young guys. And that certainly gives you a real challenge. But at the same time, when you're in the Big Ten, you don't expect a colossal drop off when you go from first string to second string. You just don't want that to be that big. But the gap, or second string to third string, the gap is huge.
Mhm.
I guess that's the difference between Illinois and Ohio State, where you lose the 5-star. So, oh my gosh, we have to bring a 4-star in off the bench.
Yeah, that's one of many differences between
Yes.
Ohio State and Illinois,
Yeah.
or Northwestern, or most of the rest of the
Right.
Big Ten, or the country for that matter.
Yes, it's a different game there for those
Yeah.
guys where injuries don't really matter. I believe they sat out their
Yeah.
2 stud wide receivers so they could win by 40 points. That's just a luxury that a lot of teams just can't quite hit.
Correct. Yeah.
Illinois had some horrible special teams play. They've had problems with the long snap multiple times this season, and had an issue again on Saturday. And you look, at least could be like a 10-point turnaround with different things on the special teams. How does the Northwestern special teams, how do they look coming into this? I know you're looking at obviously punting, kicking, and then the returns, along with the defense against returns.
I'll tell you, it could be an ugly special teams day because Northwestern has struggled with special teams all year. Just on Saturday, right? They big win over Minnesota, but they had a 93-yard punt return that he didn't score on. It was Coy Parrish. And you got down to the 5-yard line and they took it in and scored. And then they had a muffed punt at their own end. I think it was a 28-yard line. Minnesota went in and scored. And that's been an issue all year. They had Nebraska got them for a punt or a kickoff return touchdown. They muffed a punt against Penn State and it eventually ended up as a touchdown. So it's been an issue all season. And then on Saturday, Coy Parrish had that 93-yarder. And Northwestern, they scored a lot, so they were kicking off a lot. And they kicked to him time and time again. He had 230 yards in kick returns. And even the last one. So Northwestern scores with, I think it was 53 seconds left to take the lead, 38-35. They kicked it to Parrish. He went 44 yards. And after the game, we're like, why did you keep kicking? And he said, they tried to do some things to kick it away from him and they couldn't. They tried they were trying to directional kick, or they said he tried to sky one on him and it didn't work. So they couldn't even execute that to keep the ball away from number 3. They couldn't even do that. So I'll tell you, special teams has been an adventure, and Northwestern's lost a couple tight games this year. And that's really cost them, especially in the Nebraska game. They had a kick return touchdown. They lost by 7. They've just had issues there all year. And when you're a team like Northwestern, they got a small margin of error, and it's really cost them, I think, a couple games. It can really swing a game. So if Illinois is bad as well, that's where the game could be won or lost on Saturday.
The only good thing is Illinois has Hank Beatty, and he has run
Yes.
a kickback. So maybe we'll see a punt return for a touchdown again or something like that.
They'll
It'd be
kick
nice.
It to him.
Yeah.
I didn't know I couldn't figure out. I even tweeted during the game. I don't know if Braun is stubborn. I don't know if he's trying to prove something, but they keep kicking to the guy. And sure enough, he almost won the game for him at the end there.
Maybe they were just trying to tire him out and just exhaust him.
That was it.
Because I swear,
it was hurting him on defense.
Yeah. There are times it looks like Luke Altmaier has to run around. That is like basically maybe they're just using Luke to tire the defensive line out. Very dangerous way of doing that. But I felt sorry for Luke Altmaier on Saturday because he couldn't even every time it seemed like he went back to pass, he was under duress. And then they started doing some structured runs, which helped a little bit. And he would have had a pretty good day had he not been sacked 5 times from a rushing standpoint.
Yeah. So maybe they're playing chess, not checkers.
Yeah, that's yeah. Until you look at the final score, then the chess game fell apart a little bit. But yeah, it's been a challenge for Illini fans because Illinois was very positive if you listen to the preseason press junkets and stuff.
Oh yeah. They were a dark horse.
Dark horse for the CFP and had a strong offensive line returning. And for whatever happened, it does not look like a strong offensive line returned. They've had a couple good games, but it's been a real challenge for them. You saw the early indications in some of the early games where Illinois might have a poor half and then turn it on in the second half, that type of thing. And but there were some early signs in the season that maybe that unit wasn't going to be as strong as what people had hoped. And unfortunately, as the seasons drug on, I think they put things together fairly well against Rutgers and Maryland. But there have been plenty of other games that there were some real challenges. And of course, none were worse than the Indiana game, which was just the only game I can remember as challenging to watch as that game as an Illini fan. You got to go back to the Rose Bowl in 1983 because your expectations for the team was high. And then this one, at the time, Illinois was ranked, even though we had said we weren't certain Illinois should be ranked higher than Indiana, but they were highly thought of. I think came into that game number 9, and it was clear that they did not have the line play to retain that high ranking. And that's strange for a Brett Bielema team that he's been here 5 years, and probably the defensive line is probably the most challenges that he's had recruiting wise, and offensive line might be second. Not at all what I anticipated from a gentleman who is now with Nick Saban gone. I think he's got more offensive linemen in the NFL than any other coach in college football. And I thought
Wow.
that would be an easier position for recruiting, but it hasn't proven to be yet.
Yeah.
So, how do you see this game going? I know this is shaking up that crazy magic 8 ball back, the toys back when we were a kid, but how do you see this game going? Because I'm curious as to what you're going to tell me here.
Yeah, so if you asked me last Friday, I'd say a tight, low-scoring game, but now we'll see. I still think Northwestern's going to have to run the ball. I still think it's going to be a tight game. I think the teams might score a little more than I anticipated, but as usual, it's going to come down to things like special teams and turnovers and field position and thing. I think that's going to determine the game. Northwestern doesn't blow anybody out or anything like that. It's going to be a tight game if they get it where they want. And then fourth quarter, you make a couple plays and you can win the game. Or if you don't make them, you lose the game. I really think that's the way it's going to go. Bielema's had Northwestern's number over the years. They've been pretty good against them. Braun beat the Illini his first year, and then last year they lost. So it's a rubber match. And that's something I think David Braun takes seriously, is that this is Northwestern's only trophy game, and they want to win the hat and all that kind of stuff. And they certainly trumpet that a lot, that they want to win the trophy game, and it's a rivalry, and they take that seriously. So I think you'll see a team. And like I said, the fact that they got their sixth win, they know they're going to a bowl. I think they're going to be a little bit looser, and they should be. I think the offense anyway will be confident coming into this one. I think they saw what they can be. They really hadn't seen that, except I guess for ULM, they scored 42, and they had a couple big outbursts during the year, but certainly not against the Power Four competition like that. And Preston Stone, I think too, got to see. Like I said, it was something. Northwestern fans had high expectations for him. He had a really great career at SMU and took care of the football. And then his first game as a Wildcat, he threw 4 picks and fumbled. He turned the ball over 5 times. This is a guy that threw 8 picks in his career. He
Yeah.
had in the first half of his first game with Northwestern. But he's been better in the second half of the season. And I think early in the season, he was trying to do a little too much and pressing, where now it's, hey, we're going to run the football, do some play action off of that, and take what the defense gives you. That's what he's been the last few weeks, and he's played much better and turned it over much less. To answer your question, I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it'll be a close game. It'll come down to a couple plays. I did think it would be low scoring. Maybe they'll get into the 20s. Maybe they'll both be 24-20 or something like that, or maybe someone will get up to 28 or something like that. But that's where I think it'll be.
Yeah, and Illinois has been very good the last 2 years in single score games. Now this year, Illinois it's been a feast or famine for Illinois, with the exception of the USC game, which Illinois squeaked out a 2-point win in a game that they probably should have won by a lot more. You reverse a horrible fumble call right about the goal line when Illinois would have scored, and then another second fumble at about the 10 when Illinois, it was a legitimate fumble. Give one call back, and Illinois, the whole game changes enough that USC might have had some problems, and you take both of them back and you turn that game into a 42-15 or 20 there. But they've been extremely good in the close games. We'll have to see if they can continue. Last year, I believe they were 5-1 in single score games, and this year they're just 1-0. But
yeah, Northwestern's lost some tight ones that really, I think the Nebraska game, they could have had that. Stone threw an interception fourth quarter, and Nebraska scored the winner with 2:44 left. And then you look at that Michigan game, like I said, even though Michigan had them 2-1 in yardage and really dominated the game, but they 5 turnovers, and Northwestern just needed a couple first downs. They could have pulled off that upset, but they couldn't do it. So they did win a tight one on Saturday. We'll see what happens this week if it turns into a 1-score game, which I think it will.
Yeah, and it is funny that you and I both talked a little bit as we were talking around the Big Ten, and it seems like their middle class of teams probably are not as good maybe as their records might indicate. If you look at Illinois, Nebraska, and USC, Michigan, even Washington has to be
Minnesota.
at home. Minnesota, yeah, they're on paper they're good. It will be an interesting year when bowl games come to see how these teams match up against the SEC, as we will find out a little bit about the depth of the two conferences, maybe a little more this year, with the
Yeah.
exception of guys who aren't playing because, of NFL opportunities, et cetera. But certainly, I guess I we were joking on the Illini Guys podcast that as bad as things are for Illinois right now, at least we didn't go to Penn State and lose by 27. So there are positives.
Yeah.
Because certainly Nebraska fans weren't looking for that, and maybe that finally Matt Rule, maybe Penn State would have been willing to pay the $15 million buyout, but they probably won't want to do that now.
No, I don't
Question
think so.
question for you on Fitzy. I've heard some of the national guys say that when they look at coaching openings, there could be as many as 40 this season across the
Wow.
country because of, and I think, to be honest with you, Signetti has taken the lid off of even Jonathan Smith up in Michigan State. They're talking about he may get fired this year at the end of
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
years because it's not
Yeah.
shown enough, which I think is just absolutely incredible. Is there a chance he gets back into the game? Do you see him? Is there any parts of the country or any places that you think are more likely that he could all of a sudden reappear on the college football scene?
Yeah. First of all, he wants to. There's no question about that. And they're doing the PR tour and he's getting it out there. The thing about Fitz is he's never been a coordinator. He's not gonna be a coordinator kind of guy, I think. And he's looking head coach. He wants to be a head coach. He wants to be a head coach in the Big Ten. You look around the league, where's that going to happen? Because the thing to me is, even if to me, the lawsuit thing, I think that's behind him now, right? It got settled. I think he pretty much dunked on Northwestern on that one, and he got his money, and they issued a statement that they couldn't link it to him and all that kind of stuff. So I think he won the lawsuit. So I don't think that's an issue, but he does. He went 4-20 his last 2 years. They went 1-11 that last year. People in the Big Ten, I think nationally, people forget that. People in the Big Ten know that. Is a Michigan State, are they going to be excited? That's a tough sell to me to
Yeah.
a Michigan State or a Wisconsin if that job comes open. I don't know if an athletic director can stick his neck out and make a hire like that and sell them to the fan base. And Fitz he's a great leader of the program. I think he could be successful in a lot of places. It's just whether he gets that opportunity. And Michigan State too, they got a first year AD. Is he gonna in your first year you're gonna make a hire like that? I don't see it. There's a lot of people who think he will, and maybe he'll have to go a level down to a group of 5 school or something like that. From what I hear, he doesn't want to do that. He's kind of looking for the Big Ten or at least a Power 4 job. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. To me, it's whether an AD has the guts to make that move, can sell him to the fan base, and it'll be interesting to see what becomes of Fitz. And I hope he does get an opportunity somewhere. I think college football is better with Fitz in it.
Yeah. And I didn't follow the case to that degree. The biggest question I would have is it seems like in most organizations the buck stops here at the top. And I've never been comfortable with the I didn't know what was going on across my organization excuse.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I'm not saying he very well could not have. Who knows? I'm not trying to say that. But when I look at a head coach, I want them to know what is going on and have a degree of ownership, which I didn't think I saw out of that. But
Yeah. And that's an indictment on him, too. I think that it's kind of like either option is bad. Either he
right,
knew and let it happen, or he didn't know and he should have. And that's why Northwestern fired him. They determined he should have.
right,
And the other thing too is you look at Fitz had those there were 3 of the last 4 years. They won 3 games or less in 3 of his last 4 years. And that's like the advent of the NIL era. Can he manage that whole process and now revenue sharing? And, there's some question marks about him for sure. And I think he'll eventually get back into it. When and where, I don't know. Whether it'll be this year, I don't know.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of colleges who could make a mark with him. He seems to be competent in terms of running a team.
Oh, for sure.
And certainly the other thing I'm looking to see is how many people will copy what's going on out at USC, where you've essentially got a general manager as well as a head coach. Of course, Lincoln Riley doesn't like to recruit that much. So, having an AD for him is great. And even if the old Oregon coach, Chip, I'm
Kelly,
blanking on his last name, but
Chip
he,
Kelly.
yeah, Chip Kelly, he hated recruiting. He would have loved
Yeah.
to have had a GM who would handle that type of stuff for him. So there are some coaches that maybe that would be a good way to get a guy in where he could just focus on the coaching component of it. And I've
Well,
always
he
been
loves
more
recruiting though. Fitz loves
okay, yeah.
recruiting.
So then
Yeah,
that would be great then.
and he's good at it. He's a salesman. He's a very engaging, dynamic guy. He talks and he loved recruiting. So I think he'd certainly get back into that for sure.
Well, that'll be an interesting one to track with 40 openings. I would think he could beat quite a few people.
Oh, I think
If you're
so.
looking
Yeah.
for competition, if you're looking for a guy who can get you to win, and people would have to look at the situation, but I don't know that they would be in any tougher situation than trying to be at the academic leader of the Big Ten, trying to compete against the Ohio States and Michigans and Penn States and now USC's out there. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not an easy job. So
And he
certainly,
had a great run. He
yeah,
was fantastic up until those last couple of years. He had a great run. He's all-time winningest coach, 17 years, and he was the face of Northwestern football. He was Northwestern football. Everybody equated that with
yep,
him.
yep. So I do think I would be shocked if he doesn't make it back in. Louis, thanks so much for coming on. Folks, if you'd enjoyed this conversation, of course, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, of course, follow us and get those subscriptions on the audio podcast if you're listening that way. And you can go to IlliniGuys.com where it's only $99 a year. And you will be able to not only have access to all of our stories that are behind the paywall, but you also get the message boards where you can talk directly to Brad, Ked, Matt, Larry, myself. Find out, like, what did you mean when you said this, or what did you mean in that article? Then it's not a passive experience. It's actually an interactive experience. And we think that is part of the benefit of coming to IlliniGuys.com versus other places. And we would love to have you be a member. Until next time, folks, which will be basically Monday night when we go live after the basketball game. Go Illini.